What's the deal with the numbers? Why was Mark chosen for the macrodata department instead of optics and design? Do you want to know who made the caricatures of Dylan and that drawing of Bert that shows up in the teaser for the second season? Oh, and we found out who one of those mouths is that shows up in the moral of the story in the perpetuity wing. And the craziest part is that all these answers were right in front of us the whole time. Come find out all about the Macrodata Refinement Guide. Come with me. Hey there, I'm Diogo Alpendra, and welcome to another episode of Rio with me. I usually look for answers and clues about the series everywhere. In this search, we've ended up discovering several connections that could be many of the answers we're looking for. Let's dive into one of those materials. The Lexington letter, which we saw earlier, is one of those materials, just like the Macrodata Refinement Guide, which is the focus of this video. But first, we need to talk about the origin of our knowledge about this material. We know the origin of this material thanks to I we saw in the Lexington letter, which hid this guide so that its alt could find it. Along with it, she left a note that, among other things, said to distribute the training book. The answers are there. If you look, are the answers really there? Could this be a hint from the creators to us, the audience? I think so. When we closely analyze this material, it really is an onboarding manual for the Macrodata Refiners. The first bizarre thing we see in this material is that just like the old Word had that paperclip that gave tips for the old Office, here we have the same thing, a mascot that gives instructions to the refiners. And this character, this mascot, could only be a Severance chip. And how the alt we saw in the Lexington letter describes this mascot is really funny. She says, upon opening the book, I found a creature smiling at me. Forgive the rudeness. It was like a little dildo with translucent skin revealing a red spiral-shaped digestive tract that went all the way to the rectum. Remember that this is official Apple material, probably created by Dan Erickson, who is the creator of the series That Playful Genius. He created the series, he created the idea for the chip, he created the concept, and then he created supporting material that satirizes that very creation. How can you not like this guy? Finally, we are talking about a Lumon's mascot who on each page of this guide indicates and instructs refiners on how they should carry out their work. From explaining how the severance procedure was done in a very vague way, of course, to avoid sparking the curiosity of the vines, to even going through the 9 principles of Lumon, which Irving loves so much. Throughout the 23 pages, there are some really interesting points for us to discuss. So, let's go. First of all, why was Mark chosen to work in the Macrodata Refinement department? On page 4, Sevy explains that the refiner's job is to remove impurities from the data and reorganize it into the purest form possible. It also says that the refiners were chosen for this role because they exhibited 2 key characteristics that were essential for the job: intuition and emotional intelligence, so they could perform this role as quickly, efficiently, and reliably as possible. In other words, Mark was chosen for this role because they identified those characteristics in him. And the most interesting thing about all this is that while alt, we see a Mark who is totally emotionally unstable, but when it comes to work, he performs this role with mastery, not only winning an exclusive award, which would be that glowing acrylic piece, but also replacing Piety as the head of the department. Moving on page 4, Sergio also says that the Indians should be proud to have been chosen for this role because of their intellectual prowess, and that this could even spark curiosity about what those data they refine actually are, but that would affect their natural intuition. Of course, right, if we take into account what we saw in Lexington letter and knowing that the data you refine could be the cause of truck explosions and murders, it would probably inhibit any natural intuition. So, the job of the refiners is to separate each of the moods that Keir himself said he had tamed into groups of numbers. In this case, the refiners deliver these groups of numbers in the purest format so that Illuma can identify which numbers represent each mood. Do you remember what those moods are? The one that shows up when they open the little boxes on the computer and that Keir later mentions in the class about perpetuity. WO stands for wow, which means sadness, melancholy. FC would be frolic, which means joy, ecstasy. DR would mean fear, anxiety, apprehension. And if we remember, these are the numbers that Hallie refined for the first time. Remember. The Melick series, hate, anger, or a desire to do harm. In the instruction step on how to separate the numbers, there is a series of information on the screen: the trines, the file name, the boxes, the numbers that should be refined, and a coordinate orientation. Do you think these coordinates have any reference to real-world coordinates? Comment here what you think about this. The craziest thing is that it is monitored in real time. That is, if refiners put a category of numbers in a different box, a negative sign appears and asks them to put it in the correct box. Does Luma monitor this data in real time so she can act quickly? In Peggy's case, it says she completed the file at 2:30 and the explosion of the truck happened at 2:32. So 2 minutes. Would Luma have enough time to act? In addition, the guide addresses the dress code of refiners. They can't wear any prints, bright colors, or even tags on their clothes because that would trigger the code detectors. To me, that's just nonsense. It's just another way to limit any influence from the outside. In the hygiene section, check out the weirdness. The CV advises that refiners should wash their hands at least 10 times a day, before and after eating, before before and after going to the bathroom, and before and after socializing with colleagues. Sevy gives hand-washing instructions timed to happy birthday. We saw in the series that Chip keeps memories, like the names of places and how to drive a car, but not how to wash his hands. Well, we know that in real life there are people who know how to drive a car but don't have the habit of washing their hands after going to the bathroom. What's disgusting, so it's understandable, it's always good to remember. Still discourages interaction between departments, using the argument that it's to prevent the spread of diseases. It also explains the purpose of the wellness sessions, which is for I to free their mind and regain emotional stability. The break room is mentioned as a direct punishment for trying to contact you out, as it would violate their decision to balance and separate professional life from personal life. The guide also presents the rewards achieved for each percentage of file completion. 10% rubber, 25% finger trap, 75% music and dance, and 100% caricature. On top of that, the refiner of the quarter gets the waffle party, which is the biggest award at Lumon. To wrap up the guide, Sevy also presents the 9 principles of Lumon, which are: do you know who's behind the caricatures of Dylan? The drawing of Bert that we saw in the teaser, and one of the mouths we saw on the mouth mural in the perpetuity. I'll tell you, Sevy was designed by an illustrator who goes by the name Danny Illustration. And believe it or not, he also seems to be the one who drew the we saw in the teaser, besides being one of the smiles we see on the mouth mural in the perpetuity wing. And also one of the artists behind the various artworks of Lumon, like the various caricatures, as well as the visual identity of Lumon that we see throughout the series. And you can check all of that out on his Instagram profile. Go take a look. And what about that acrylic from Mark? Dylan said that wasn't a prize, it was just something he won. But for what reason? Mark won that acrylic for breaking the record for the shortest time to complete a single file. And the alien name that appears under the acrylic is exactly the name of the file he completed. Comment down below if you want a video totally dedicated to this information. But first, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you always know when new videos are out. Let's try to post as soon as possible so you don't miss anything, and it really helps us out a lot. Keep following here on the channel all the analyses and theories of the episodes and materials that exist. Also, follow our Instagram profile, severance.ruptura, where we post analyses and theories since 2022, when the series was released. And I'll say more, if you hadn't seen any of this before, now, you've seen it with me.
In the darkest moments, I could see you coming here.
By refining your macrodata file, you brought glory to this company, and to me, and Egan.
Love you. But now I have to go because there are others who need me around the world.
See you later, Hellier. Thank you.